Hi, I'm Pete DeFazio. I'm with F Body Warehouse, and today we're in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and we're going to show you how to go out and buy a car. A lot of guys will save up and they'll want to go out and buy a nice Trans Am. Well, there's a big difference between buying a Trans Am and buying a Trans Am that's worth the money. So what we're going to do today is show you, if you're buying a car, you know, in that $4,000 to $8,000 range, things you want to look for. When you get into the higher restored cars, you can see, you know, if a car is restored, you'll know right off the bat. You'll be able to look at the floors. But on some of these diamonds in the rough, you want to be able to know what you're looking for. So what we have here today is, this was found on Chattanooga Craigslist. This is a 1979 10th anniversary Trans Am. This is one of the 4-speeds, which makes it a low number car. And while it's not matching numbers, it has sat for years and years and years. So I'm going to introduce you here in a minute to Mike. He's a gentleman about this car, and he's going to tell you a little bit about it. So this is Mike Fryer. He's a gentleman that bought this car. And Mike, tell us, how many Trans Ams do you currently own?
6. 4 79s and 2 1984s. But this is a car I've been looking for. Obviously, 4-speeds are hard to afford, as you can tell. You watch the market on it, whether it's Craigslist or eBay. This is what I want. This is what I've been looking for a long time, and I just got lucky. I found one right in my hometown. That doesn't come along every day.
Well, being that this is a 79 10th anniversary 4-speed, the 79, the 80s, and the 81 pace car editions, or the silver edition in 79, all were VIN with an X. And what that does is it makes it a car that's really clone-proof. So the investment potential on this car is pretty high. You're not going to find a clone of this car like you find with a lot of the special edition black and gold cars and so on. But you figure, when you're looking at a car, think of it this way. Break the car into 8s. You have a front fender, a door, a rear quarter, your hood, and the back end and the tub of the car. And when I say the back end, I mean the trunk, the rear valance panel, and the roof.
TA.com, the Trans Am information site. Message forums, newsletters, Trans Am chat room. 78TA.com. See you online.
When you're looking at a car, a good way to do it is start just going around the car. You start on the front fender. Feel along your ridge. Make sure you don't have a lot of dents and dings. Look around the fender vent area. And as you see on this, it has a little bit of rust there, but that's not rotted yet. Come down, and you're going to actually get down below and take a look at that fender. Make sure it's not rotted. You want to make sure this area here, because this is where they tend to rot out and rot through. So you're going to make sure that area is good. Run your hand along. Make sure that it has an inner fender well lip and that it's not been rotted or bondoed. Especially on cars that have a lot of pinstriping, it's really easy to hide a lot of bondo work on them because you have that pinstripe to break it up. So if it's wavy, the pinstripe will hide a lot. So when you go through it, check and make sure that the inner fenders and the fender lip are real good, and then check on the front too. This section right here, you've got the spoiler cover in this area, but if there's a big rot hole underneath there, you're not doing yourself any good. So you want to check through. You can look in from the nose cone and look straight down this area here by looking in through the nose cone. Bringing a small flashlight with you when you go to look at a car is a great idea. You'll be able to look into these areas and you'll be able to see the back side of that fender well there. When you're looking, while you're looking at that fender, look down the door jamb here too, because you want to make sure that forward jamb doesn't have a lot of rot and decay in it. Next thing you're going to want to look at is going to be the driver and the passenger side doors. Things like window sweeps, don't worry too much about. I mean, you're talking this is about $100 to replace, but it's small when you look at the overall picture. If these rubbers aren't any good, it's not a biggie, but it should put a warning flag that you're going to need to check the underside of the door frame, and we'll do that in just a minute. When you're looking at a door, you're going to look along this ridge here, and on a Trans Am, this is a rounded one. On a Camaro, this is a little more sharp. But look, and you can see right in here, this car has some door dings right in here. There's another one in here. And you're just looking for the contour. The other thing you want to be careful to watch for is going to be the transition from your body line on your fender to your door, and then your door to your rear quarter panel. Also note your gapping around the door. If your gaps on a car are way off, it's going to tell you one of two things. Either the car's been taken apart before, or it's probably been in a wreck. Make sure your gaps from one side to the other side are fairly even between. There's going to be a lot of variation car to car, but you're looking for more of extreme. If your gap from your door to your rear quarter panel doesn't look very good, it's a good indication that you're going to need to work on your door hinges some. On this car, the gaps are pretty good, and the door shuts pretty good. And if you look at this car, while it does need paint, it does need interior, it lines up really, really well. So we've looked at the outside of the door, checking the bottom corners for rust. They're notorious there, and down here across the bottom. The reason doors rot across the bottom is because this window sweep goes bad at some point. What you want to look for on a door frame is follow this seam down here. Make sure that this area right here is still intact and doesn't have a lot of rot. You can run your fingers along the underside of the door frame, and there's going to be a series of holes, or oblong holes, and those are water drains. You want to make sure that the water drains are not plugged and that you don't have a lot of rot and decay there. You can have a great looking door, but if the bottom side of the door is rotted, you're buying another door. You're just not going to be repairing it. Check that the striker area is not damaged. And outside of that, as long as the doors are pretty good, you'll be able to work with it. Now while we have the door open here, we're going to look at the rocker panel. Follow your rocker panel front to rear. And these cars are very notorious for rotting right here. So make sure that if you see rust, really take a look and make sure that it's not holes. Also make sure that there's not Bondo in here. People will pack these full of Bondo. The rear quarter panel of your car is really the actual tub of the car. Now you can replace quarter panel skims, but rear quarters really make or break a car. Note, from here to here is where GM welded on the roof. So if you were to sand down here, what you're going to find is there's going to be actual lead in there. And you will find occasionally a little crack there, and that's not a biggie. That can be repaired. That's no issue really at all. If there's a lot of tweaking and bending in this area, you have an issue, and you probably are going to want to look more into it before you invest into a car. Follow around the rear window trim and make sure there's not a lot of rust coming through. A lot of these cars, the window trim will become loose. Pine needles or debris will sit in that, and it will rot the top of the rear quarter panel out. If a car doesn't have an interior, you'll want to look. If let's say you're buying a car and it doesn't have the rear armrest panels or sail panels, you're going to want to look at the inside. Cars from Florida or coastal regions actually tend to rot from the inside out as opposed from the outside in. A car from, say, Pennsylvania, New York, New Hampshire, you'll see a lot of external body rust. These cars have the fender vents, the lower spoilers. So finding rust in them can be a little trickier. We've already checked here along our door jamb, and what you're going to do is just look down in this area here where my hand is, And then also come in from behind with your fingers and bow along and feel for Bondo. There's an area of sheet metal in here, and if that sheet metal is intact, it's a pretty good indicator that the quarter panel is going to be a good quarter panel and not packed in mud. But looking around there, if the owner will allow you to, you can take the one screw out here on the door jamb vent, wiggle it up and off. You can actually run your hand straight down the body, all the way down, and feel that area with your hand. If that's all intact, you're in a really good place. Some owners don't like people taking the time to do something like that, take a part off the car, but that's a really great way to look. It's one Phillips head screw, and if you're about to drop $6,000 or $7,000 on a car, it's a great little thing to bring with you. You need one Phillips head screwdriver to do it. Going down to the back side of the rear of the car, these are very, very bad about rotting out. You follow once again your lip, straight down the back side, and on the underside of the rear quarter panel there's an outer skin and an inner skin. On the inner skin, right at this corner, right behind it on the back side here, there's a plug. A lot of times debris will get caught in there, moisture or dirt will sit in there, and that'll cause this whole area to rust and rot out. Once again, you're looking for Bondo. And on this side, it looks pretty good. There might be just a little peck right in there, but that's not from rust. That's probably from something banging on the trunk. If your lines are good throughout, you're good to go. The back half of your car is extremely important, and this is an area where a lot of people that go out and buy cars get snake burned. And the reason is they'll say, oh, the car looks great, it runs great, but they didn't take the time to look at the little things, and the little things in this case are big, big, big things. First off, you have your trunk lid. Trunk lids normally rot along the seam, and a trunk lid really is not a biggie. If you need a trunk lid, it's fine. You have 4 bolts, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Put a new one on and you're done. The trunk is held up by 2 rods that run left to right in a crisscross pattern, and that's what puts trunk tension on the trunk lid. That's what should make it pop up like so. In order to replace these, you have to remove the rear glass and this plate which bolts on, so it is a little more in depth of a repair. One thing you do want to look for is run your hand up and underneath and around the hinge assembly. GM was really bad about giving these enough paint on them, so they tended to rot out. On this car here, it has just real light surface rust, and it's not much of an issue in any way, shape, or form. You're going to run left to right and just make sure. And I mean, if you're looking at a really nice car, don't get in there and start banging around and knocking dirt and debris all over the trunk mat of the person of the car you're looking at. Just check it, and you can check it without being destructive. Your biggest area on these cars is, of course, the trunk pans. This car has a phenomenal trunk pan. You have a drain here and a drain on the other side, and they're going to have a tarp type substance covering from GM. This one still has that intact. You want to look for rot in this lower area because this is where the water will pool if you have a window leak or a trunk seal leak. Check on top of this area of the frame rail, and you can actually, once again, when checking your rear quarters, you can get your hand down a little ways down the inner drop of that rear quarter panel too. Check along here, this very leading edge where it leads into the tail panel all the way across, and make sure that that area is intact. You can buy a trunk pan, they're going to run about $150, but it's pretty labor intensive. You have to drop the gas tank, and you're getting into some real construction at that point. Next big point is going to be the rear valance panel. And in order to check it, you got to get on the ground. So don't wear really nice clothes. You have metal that comes together here. The bumper mounts to the body through a series of bolts. Get in here and look. On this car here, at one point it had been pinged on this side, and you can see where they've done a little hammering on it, but there's not a lot of rot and crunch rot through here. If this is rotted on a car that you're looking to buy, leave. Period. You really, you're going to have $3,000 or $4,000 into repairing this if you take it to a shop. If the tail panel's not intact, walk away. You're saving yourself a lot of time and a lot of money. Next thing you're going to look at is the A-pillar here. You want to make sure there's not visible rust on the inner lip or the outer lip. You're going to follow it up. Now on a Fisher T-top car, on a hardtop car you see what you see. You know, the roof should be straight, shouldn't have a lot of dents and dings and pings. On a Fisher T-top car, and this car doesn't really have it, which is great. But towards the back here, normally they always get a dent. And that's just from the unibody flexing. These aren't full frame cars, they're unibody cars, so you're going to get body flex. But look and make sure that it's not horrible. And as long as it isn't too bad, you should be good to go. Look around your weather seal channels. Make sure that you don't have a lot of rot. These cars typically rot right in here, on the front and also on the back. Look around in here. Look in just all the areas, kind of make sure that everything looks good. And then now, next thing we're going to do is show you floors. These cars are horrible for rotting out in the floor pans. That's very typical. So if you have a little rust, it's fine. Floor pans are available. They're fairly inexpensive. If you can't get the seat out, great. Most people aren't going to let you remove the lower part of the rear seat. But around this area here is where they're really bad about rotting. This car is pretty solid in this area. The next spot you want to check is the rear floor pans, and this is where you put your feet in the back seat on the left and the right. They always rot there. That section is available. This rear seat section is not. And then our final spot is going to be around the toe pans. Now note, you can buy the full-length floor pan, but where it begins to cut up, after it makes that slant to go up to the firewall, there's a diagonal area. The floor pans that you're going to buy don't include that toe panel section. On the driver's side, they will get some decay that comes in down through the cowl. On the passenger side, on a car that, say, the inner heater core is let go on, that'll cause it too. The carpet gets saturated, it just sits, and GM was not really good about putting a lot of paint on the floors of these cars to begin with. You obviously, on the nicer car, are not going to be able to go through and start pulling seats out, but what you can do, once again, lay on down. And the rear floor pan area is right here. Just figure your door handle straight down, and you'll be able to feel that all the way across on both sides. You want to, if you can, get in there and look around towards the back farther. This car, the underbody of this car is just amazing. It's really in good shape. You're going to scoot up to where the subframe connects, and this is where you'll check the front floors. And you're going to go on the inside of the frame rail, and on this car right here, and that is right down at the front edge of the fender, there is a spot, and it's about that big. So when we get the interior out of this car, you're going to be putting in either a patch or a small front pan. And that's not a biggie. It's typical for these cars. These cars are 30 plus years old. It's to be expected even on southern cars. When you go to look at a car, don't get googly-eyed over chrome, belts and hoses and aftermarket this or that, because if you do, the second you do that, you're going to start to forget about what's important. An example, this right here is the radiator support cradle. This radiator support cradle is not available new. These are your inner fender wells. Once again, not available new. And then you have your hood. Once again, not available new. If any of these components are bad, you're going to have to find them used. So chrome valve covers are 80 bucks. Don't worry about chrome valve covers. You can put them on later. Keep your mind on what's important, and that is buying a solid car. The core support, where you want to check, this is the driver's side. This is where your battery normally sits. And this area here typically will be rotted right in here. On this car, they relocated the battery right into the trunk. So it was great because you could just look down, say boom, it's there, everything's intact. Inner fender wells are there, everything's intact. On the driver's side, you're going to look for rust down low, the battery area here. The battery tray itself, if it's rusty, that's okay. They're about $20. But this core support here is tough to find. So make sure that this is not rotted through here. You can also look down at your body bushings here. These are for your radiator support bushings. And if these are just corroded and the rubber's falling apart on them, you'll notice that the front end of the car won't sit quite as straight and flush, spaced out and gapped out properly. Your other area, which is fairly important, is the nose cone. Now there is a new nose cone available. All of the factory nose cones had a tendency to warp right here on the driver's side, right on this upper lip. That's normal. What there is behind here there's a cushion. And that cushion tended to warp up, and as that warped up it made that bow up a little bit. So don't fret that too much, because you can buy these now. They're going to run you $600 and they're going to be made of flex glass, but it is replaceable. I'm going to scoot over here. Once again, we're looking at now our passenger side inner fender well and our core support. And what we're looking for is to make sure that it's intact towards the bottom, and that on the inside of the core support here, around here, you don't have any rot and rust. Your firewall, the only thing, you know, overall these stay intact. The only thing you do want to look for is right in this area here, just like as you were looking at the cowl area. You just want to look through here to make sure you don't have any actual rot and decay in there. The last thing I want to cover with you is a Trans Am hood. Trans Am hoods can look great, but they won't sit flush half the time. Right here, you see you have the hood hinge, and it runs from the back going forward. About a half inch up is this punched out stamp. I don't know why GM put a stamp right there, but when the hood hinges weren't oiled properly, what will happen is the hood will bow right here, and it'll rip either right here or right in here. When that sheet metal rips there, the actual hood is going to bow, and it's never going to sit down flush straight down the fenders. It'll dome up. So look for this on both sides of your hood to ensure that the hood's not ripped. If you have a hood with a great outer surface that looks wonderful, but it's bent, it's really useless in the end. To know what to look for in one of these older cars, buying one is a whole lot easier for you. Looking around at your body, your biggest thing is your body. Suspension, fairly cheap to rebuild. Drivetrain is not as cheap, but still inexpensive.
Welcome to the largest 1970 to 1981 Trans Am and Firebird owners group on the web. Message forum, tech information, and 4,500 members strong. transamcountry.com.